Okay, well, write down your number, I might use it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. If they don't show up, I'm calling you. All right, is that a deal?
Works for me.
All right, thank you.
You
Thank
bet.
you.
Just like 5 minutes down the road.
Okay.
We'll try to get started.
Do it. Yeah. I like to start on time.
But that wasn't it. They had a lot of, that was nothing.
I want to welcome you all and thank you all for coming to this town hall meeting. I hope you enjoy it. And what we're going to do is we will start out with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance, and then I'll introduce our speaker. So let's do the pledge first. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you continue to stand, we'll pray. Go ahead.
Heavenly Father, we just come before you this evening and we thank you so much for this opportunity to have this meeting in this beautiful facility, and we thank you that our speaker got in safely, and I pray that he gets home safely with the crazy airlines right now. I also pray for all of us tonight that, Lord, you would just open our hearts to the truth here and help us to see that this is a way that men who you inspired to write our Constitution also wrote Article 5. And I just pray that you would help us to answer all the questions here tonight and just bless this meeting in a productive way. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I apologize to you all for that. I'm sorry, I forgot to turn it off. I would like to introduce our speaker to you, Rick Santorum. He's a senior advisor for Convention of States. Senator Santorum was a candidate for the Republican nomination for president in 2012 and 2016. Winning the 2012 Iowa caucus and 10 additional states with nearly 4 million votes. Prior to his campaign for president, Rick served 2 terms in both the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, where he gained a reputation for one of the nation's leading government reformers, a pro-life advocate, and a national security expert. And with that, I will introduce our speaker, Rick.
Thank you, Shirley, and I want to just recognize Shirley for the tremendous work she does. I travel to a lot of states. Tomorrow will be my 72nd flight on United this year, so I travel around a lot, and she does an amazing job here. It's not easy, but we appreciate all the great work you do, Shirley. Thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. I know the Northern Lights are out there, and I'm sure they're looking amazing. So you're here instead of watching that. So I question your judgment initially, but it's great to have you here. I want to, probably the best way to watch out. Coming up here. Where that came from, but let me start out by maybe talking a little bit about myself, but also why I came to the position of being a supporter of convention states. Because if you're a conservative and someone walks up to you and says, I have this idea that we should do something that hasn't been done in almost 250, never been done in 250 years of the history of the country, but I want to do it now. And if you're a conservative, your natural reaction was, well, it wasn't done for 250 years, probably a good reason for it, but why should we do it now? That was my reaction. And so I initially was, we don't need to do this, and this is an overreaction. I have come full circle on that belief, and for two reasons. Number one, because I actually took the time to study what the convention, what Article 2, Section 5 says, and the history surrounding it. And the more I learn about it, the more comfortable I am that this is as safe as anything. It isn't across the street being hit by a car, but there's always risk in doing anything. But people say, well, you know, this could happen, this could happen. I said, well, Congress tomorrow could abolish Christmas. They could actually pass a law and do that. The president can sign it. Anybody afraid of that? Do you think that might happen? No. There are risks, and then there are unreasonable risks that you don't really consider when you do things, right? I mean, you get in the car and you drive. Is there a risk? Yes. But it's a risk that's worth taking given the benefits of getting into the car and going where you want to go. So nobody lives in a risk-free world. So there's always risk. Well, yes. But the question is, how important the objective is for the risk that you take. And so, in my study of it, and I'll explain that, and I certainly happy to answer questions on it. He's still not dead. Let's try it. Yeah, whatever. You work on it. So number one, I got very, very comfortable, read a lot about it, studied it, and I thought I knew the Constitution pretty well. It was drafted in my state, Pennsylvania, and I studied multiple books on the Constitution because one of the things I felt when I represented Pennsylvania is I wanted to know Pennsylvania history better than anybody. And because I had to defend my state, defend things, and so, I mean, if you want to go to Gettysburg sometime, call me. I do tours of Gettysburg because I wanted to know that battle better than anybody. And so I studied it. So I felt comfortable. Number two, I looked at the state of the country, and you say, well, you know, our country is in decline. I'm hopeful. I'm not necessarily an optimist, right? I'm hopeful because hope is a virtue, and God said you should hope, and so I do. But I look at the situation and I see a country in decline. Now, can things change? Of course things can change, and I'm hopeful they do. But if we keep doing what we're doing, we're not going to, and it's not going to end well. And I think it's just the realism. People say, oh, Trump. Trumpism, most of which I support, not everything, but the vast majority of which I support, and I'll explain why, you know, is it could be a movement or it could be just a fad, right? It could end with Trump. I mean, there's really not, I just was a group of conservatives here in South Dakota, not from South Dakota, but from all over. We went on a hunting trip, and a bunch of conservative leaders, many names that you would know. And that was one of the big questions. What happens after Trump? And the answer is really don't know. And because Trump hasn't really laid out a clear and cogent agenda of what he really believes in and what he wants to do with the country. As you know, it's because every day he's up with something else that you never even heard that he was going to do before. That's the nature of Trump. But it's no way to put together a movement that is supported by people because they know what the movement stands for. Basically, the movement stands for whatever Trump says today. And that's not a movement, that's a fad. And so, can it become, that fad turn into a movement? Maybe. But a lot of the things that are involved with this fad/movement are problematic for the future of the country. And one of them is something we talked about it, is that the president doesn't care about spending. Now, he put Doge in place. In the end, it saved, anybody remember how much? $9 billion. Okay. We have a $37 trillion debt, right? And you save $9 billion. Donald Trump has said he will not cut any entitlement programs, he will not cut Medicaid, he will not cut Medicare, he will not cut anything. That is almost 70% of the budget. Yes, sir.
It's at $9 billion. I mean, that's kind of unfair. That was a function of Congress.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That
No.
That was Congress.
It was Congress and Trump, because Trump submitted that bill.
Trump's Doge.
But no, hold on one second. Yeah, Trump, that's right. They pointed out a lot more waste, and he was able to get rid of some of that waste. You know, he's shutting down the Department of Education, all that stuff. The point is, he can't not spend the money unless Congress agrees not to spend the money. And so you say it's not Congress's fault. With all due respect,
It is Congress.
it is Congress's fault. But with all due respect, that's what leadership is about. It's about forming consensus and getting people to it. It's always Congress's fault. For 250 years, it's Congress's fault. Why? Because Congress is historically, we'll talk about this too, Congress, and the way our Constitution was written, it was supposed to be hard to pass bills. It's supposed to be really hard. Why? Because the whole idea was to keep the federal government small. So it was supposed to be hard. And so Trump, we have to end the filibuster. That's his latest thing. Why? Because it's hard. And I'll get into that too. So, but the point is, it's hard, and the way you do it is either get big political wins, so you have a big majority so you can do things, and that's not happened under Donald Trump. He's the leader, and so if he's not able to put a wave election together where you get big majorities, you can say, well, that's the Congress's fault, but I would say, in part, it's the leader of the party's fault who hasn't been able to put together that movement to accomplish what needs to be done. And so his policy is, let's just get rid of the need for consensus building or a large political consensus in America who elects Republicans who want to do what I want to do, and let's just become a majoritarian body, where whatever the majority at the moment wants happens. That is a very dangerous place to live in. It's a very dangerous place to live in, and again, one of the reasons, in fact, start with this, one of the principal reasons that addition to understanding what Article 5 is about and all those things, was Trump's position on entitlements and his position on the filibuster. Because it showed to me that the Republican Party is no longer really interested in having the federal government be in any kind of control zone. And that we see, since my time in Congress, I got elected to Congress 35 years ago, before some of you were born, okay? So I've been around a long time. I've run for president twice, okay? I'm an old hand at this. I got started pretty young, but I'm an old hand at this. I've seen it all. And I'm telling you that the Republican Party is no longer the party of limited government. It's no longer the party of states' rights. It's no longer the party of individual and personal freedoms, in the sense that more and more decisions are being made in Washington, D.C. Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
That's
you're
okay.
using the term no longer. When was it?
Yeah, so the answer to that is, we were, when I got involved in the movement, and we did some things that was we cut entitlement programs. I was the author of the welfare reform program. We cut welfare. We ended a federal entitlement for welfare, the only time it ever happened. And we talked all the time about limited government. Look at the contract with America. We campaigned about Ronald Reagan, government is not the answer, it's the problem. We were a party that said the federal government is a problem. We need to get power back, devolution, we need to devolve power. So yes, that's what we were about. We are no longer, we don't even talk about that. When I was in the Senate, when I came to the Senate in 1985, we came within one vote of passing a balanced budget resolution and sending it to the states. One vote. So to say no, that we were never that way, that's just not true, number one. And number two, and this is the reality, and if you just let me hold on, because I'm gonna build up to answer your question, but I gotta start from a little history. So those are the two reasons I decided, okay, we gotta do something. And the reason is because people always say, don't touch the Constitution. People oppose this. Don't touch the Constitution. Ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution has been touched. You know there are 27 amendments, 17 since the founding. And they touched it. And they touched it in a way that has undermined our ability to keep power out of Washington and keep power in your hands and the hands of communities and states. That's just true. And so to say that we can fix it when there's a structural problem, we can fix it by winning more elections or doing this. That just ignores the reality. You've got a crack in your foundation. The Constitution isn't the same Constitution. Yes, sir.
I believe you're saying not that there are not amendments that are wrong, but the Constitution has been touched by the Supreme Court some other places, rather than.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying,
So there's
I will say that.
Okay.
I will say that the Supreme Court did do that. So you're right, that's part of it. But before they started messing with the Supreme Court started messing with it in the 1930s and beyond, there was a change to the Constitution that changed Washington, D.C. forever. And it was put forward by the progressives around the turn of the century. And it was, anybody know what raise your hand if you know what the 17th Amendment is. Prior to the 17th Amendment, in the original Constitution, have anybody seen the Netflix series about James Garfield? Anybody watch Netflix or anything like that? You've seen it. It's a great series. If you get Netflix, I encourage you to watch it. It's a 4-part series on the series starts out. This is a series on the 20th President of the United States and the man who shot him. It's really cool. It's a very cool series. But in that series, there's a senator called Roscoe Conkling, who's this head of what's called Tammany Hall, which is this corrupt New York, horrible political dynasty. And he was a senator. And so he decides that he's going to resign, and his partner's going to resign because they don't want to have the votes for Garfield to pass reforms. And then wait long enough to where that passes, and then they get reelected again. So, well, how could that happen? Well, because, and he did it. He tried to get reelected again, and he got reelected, they showed it there. He went to the state legislature and they voted on it. Up until 1914, the state Senate and state House elected senators. Lincoln Douglas debate, they weren't running for the Senate in an election. They were running and campaigning at those debates for House and Senate candidates in Illinois. Because whoever won the House or Senate, they appointed them. You say, well, what's that have to do with anything? Prior to the 17th Amendment, how many people did it take in order to get consent for a bill to be voted on? We just had this big fight. You saw the other day that a few Democrats broke on the shutdown, and they got to 60 votes to invoke cloture. Cloture meaning close. Close debate, close off debate, even though there really wasn't any debate going on. They could have made them debate, but they closed off debate and forced them, then you could vote, and at that point it's just a majority vote. Prior to the 17th Amendment, how many senators had to agree to vote before there was a vote? Anybody know? Every one of them. One senator could block the vote from coming up in the United States. And for the first 100 years, they didn't even have to publicly object. All they had to do is tell the leader, I don't want to vote on it, and it wasn't voted. And it was seen as disrespectful to call someone out that they were the ones that objected. It was ungentlemanly.
That was prior to what date?
Late 1800s. Then, late 1800s, you had to stand up and formally object. But still, one senator could object. And there was no way. And so, a movement came along, sounds very familiar, called the Progressive Movement. We are now involved in the second great progressive movement. And the Progressive Movement supported certain things. But first and foremost, a more activist federal government. They wanted more centralization of power. That's what the Progressive wanted. And they realized at the core of that was a lack of revenue. Federal government didn't have any source. You know what the largest source of revenue was prior to the 17th Amendment? Tariffs. Income tax on the excise tax on alcohol and tariffs. Those are the two major sources, right? Little side, really interesting history. It's why the 16th Amendment and the 18th Amendment passed at the same time, along with the 17th. There were two progressive amendments and one conservative Christian amendment. You say, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would, if the country is moving in a progressive fashion, why would they pass this conservative Christian amendment? Because the conservative Christians made a deal with the progressives. You know what that deal was? If the largest source of federal revenue was the excise tax on alcohol, then you could never get the votes from states to pass a prohibition amendment because it would defund the federal government. So conservative Christians across this country voted for an income tax so they could get prohibition. One of the first of many stupid conservative compromises. Right? Stupid. Along with that came the 17th Amendment, which called for the popular election of senators. How did that come about? Again, I read an interesting the other day that said that we learn from history. The reality is we don't. We learn from recent history. History that either we remember or our parents remember or grandparents who taught us that. You know, when I was growing up, my dad served in World War II. I knew all about World War II. I mean, everybody knew about World War II. I knew nothing about World War I, right? Today, young people know nothing about World War II. We have people going out there talking about the Holocaust didn't exist. Young kids, right? So, you have, back at the turn of the century, we had this progressive movement. Part of the progressive movement was fake news. Shocking, isn't it? How history repeats itself. And what it was called back then, it wasn't called fake news. Anybody know what it was called back then? It was two terms. Yellow journalism. Does that make, from your history lessons, remember yellow journalism? I guarantee you nobody in high school today knows what yellow journalism is. They don't teach it. And there was also a type of reporter, and they were called, they were muckrakers. Fake news. Digging up muck. Yellow journalism, which is not clear, but yellow. And you know what the first target of yellow journalism and muckrakers were? Yes? State legislatures. State legislatures were evil. They were corrupt. They sold senatorships. They had improper influence on the country. And they brought up story after story of corruption and everything in the state legislature. And they built an effort across the country that they shouldn't be trusted with the 20 United States senators. And that's what happened. And so you say, well, what's the big deal? Well, the first election for senators was in 1914. A third of the Senate was up in 1914. Nothing changed. 1960 was the second election. Another third of the Senate was up. You have 6-year terms. What happened? After the second third was, so 2/3 of the Senate now is elected by the people, they changed the rules. No longer could one senator object. And they put in this reform, which we now see as outrageous, which is cloture. That if you could get 2/3 of the Senate to support having a bill come for a final vote, then you get your vote. Here's what I'll tell you. There have been 3 times in American history where one party has controlled the president, the Senate, and the House, with the Senate having a filibuster-proof majority of one party. In other words, they had the votes in one party to do what they wanted. Can anybody tell me what those 3 times in history were?
Franklin Roosevelt?
The New Deal, the largest single expansion of the federal government in history. Social Security, welfare, jobs programs, everything. Second time, the Great Society, Medicaid, Medicare, welfare, food stamps. Third time, Obamacare. For those who say we need to get rid of the filibuster, understand this. We have had over 100 years to do something about these three programs. We put in something called reconciliation, which would have allowed us to do something with these three programs. Have we ever done anything? No. Why? Once a benefit is given, it can never be taken away. Now, can it be? Sure. It never is. It is easy to vote to give people something for nothing. It is damn near impossible to win an election if you take it away. You want to pass a filibuster? You want to eliminate it? We will lose this republic. Period. And it's coming. It's coming because the Democrats, see, I have a superpower. I listen to what the left says, and I believe them. I wrote a book about it in 2004. Hillary Clinton wrote a book called It Takes a Village. I wrote It Takes a Family. And I wrote it because I saw what the left was doing. I saw what they had accomplished in America, and I saw what they had their sights on to destroy, to clean the field of opposition. They controlled, by 2004, they controlled every institution in America. And not right away. I mean, first they took over colleges and universities. It's really amazing to hear people say how bad, DEI and all this, this politically correct stuff and cancel culture. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been going on for decades at our colleges and universities. Decades. And we just quietly let it happen. And our donors funded it. And our tax dollars gave scholarships and student loans to educational institutions who were destroying America by corrupting our young people's minds. And we just went along with it. And so that was the start. Let me finish. That was the start. Then you had trade unions, all controlled by the left, right? And they're socialists. I don't know if you watched this guy, Zoran Mandani, this new. And the first thing he said when he won, you know what he quoted? Eugene Debs. Anybody know who Eugene Debs is? He was the founder of the Socialist Workers' Party of America. He was the presidential nominee for the first 5 years. He was sent to jail during World War I for sedition. And he quoted him. Not God, not Lincoln, Eugene Debs. That's what we're up against. Unions. And third, the news media. Everyone thinks the news media is fake now. No! The news media has been corrupt and fake and fighting against Republicans for my entire political career. They were just clever about it, and you didn't notice it. Here's how they were clever. Now, they have to go out and lie and cheat and steal, do all the terrible things that are obvious that they're doing. You know why? Because there are now other sources of information. When I ran for Congress in 1990, I had 2 ways to get my message out. 3. 1, stand on a street corner and yell. Right? That was my best way to get out. 2, have someone print something in the paper, or on the radio, or on television. 3, buy ads. That's it. So you could talk to people, you could get the press to report something, or media to report something on you, or you bought ads on the media that was not treating you particularly well. Did the media was the media openly hostile to me? Did they write a lot of bad stories on me? No. They weren't biased. Show me where I was biased. And I'll show you where you're biased. You never said a word about me. You silenced me. You doxed me. That's how the media succeeded in lionizing the left, promoting them, talking about them, covering everything they do, and simply silencing the other side. Now they can't do that because you have a voice. It's called social media, it's called internet, whatever it is. And so now they've gotten desperate, and they have to do these ridiculous things. So the media was third. Fourth, primary and secondary education. The unionization of primary and secondary school destroyed public education. Because the unions, who are they on, what side are they on? And so what were they indoctrinating what were they doing indoctrinating their people? And then the fifth was the business community. You say, what, the business community? Yes. For years, the business community was the scions of industry were all conservatives or Republicans. They aren't anymore. When did that change? At the end of the 20th century, with the dot-com revolution. The information technology age changed where the wealth was in America, from small town America, where industries were, and farming was, and lumbering was, and all the natural resources were, and they shifted it to the coasts where the technology was, where the information age. And all of the people, guess what? All of the people at these tech companies that are making billions of dollars, guess what? They all came from college. They didn't come from mainstream America, they came from colleges, and they're all leftists. And they have all the money. That's why since about 20 years ago, Democrats have systematically outspent Republicans, now easily 2-1 in every election. So when that happened, I realized, oh, and finally, I missed one before business, Hollywood. I know that you're gonna find this hard to believe, but up until the 1960s, Hollywood was a conservative organization, generally speaking. They had something called the Hays Code. Anyone remember Dick Van Dyke Show? You see Bob and Laura Petrie, two different beds in their bedroom. Did you ever see them lying on bed together? No. Why? Because the Hays Code said, if you're on a bed with another person of the opposite sex, one of your feet has to be on the ground. True. Hollywood was not on their side. That flipped. Well, what's left? Church. Two institutions, the church and the family. In the last 20 years, they have spent every ounce of their energy to destroy both. Silence both. Corrupt both. And they're winning. So, I wrote this book saying all these things were happening, and this is going to happen. I talked about gender ideology in 2004. Go back and look how many people mentioned that. I did. Because it's the logical step toward corruption of the human person and denial of God as the creator. You're your own creator. You can be whatever you want to be. I say that, I know it's a rabbit trail, but I say that to you, I have a pretty good track record of seeing where the country has been and where it's going. I wrote a book in 2014. You know what it was called? After I ran for president in 2012. It was called Blue Collar Conservative. And the book talked about what I ran for when I ran for president in 2020 and 2012. I ran talking about reshoring manufacturing, tighter immigration, tariffs. Any of this sound familiar? You know who read that book? In 2014? He called me. He said he heard me on the radio. He wanted to talk to me. I walked into his office in New York. He had a copy of my book. And he said, I walked in, he said, I read your book. I said, yeah, you read my book. I read your book, great book. I said, the hell you read my book? And he said, someone needs to run for president on this book. So I'm telling you, as someone who has a pretty darn good track record of where this country is going, if we don't stop the left from taking absolute power in Washington, which is eliminating the filibuster, and it's not going to happen in 2 years, it's not going to happen, it may happen in 4. But we got 3 or 4 years to do something about it. Because they're not, the Democrats take control of the Senate, which they're not going to in all likelihood next year. They're not gonna do anything because Trump's president, he can veto it. And then they need 2/3 of the Senate to override. So that's not gonna happen. Okay? But they'll wait and see if they get a Democratic president and they have the clean sweep, then they'll do it. So we have a ticking time bomb. Because Jonathan's right, they're gonna do it. But Jonathan's also right, we shouldn't be the one to do it. We should stand for the republic that has structures in place that our founders put in place to limit the power of the federal government. And the only thing left, aside from our Supreme Court, which could change, is the United States Senate. So how do we make sure that doesn't happen? Convention states. Well, what amendment could happen that could stop that? One, and pass. Because remember, you call this convention, and you propose amendments, you're gonna get 3/4 of the state legislatures to agree with it. You know how hard that is? The highest bar of in any governmental institution in the country. There's nothing harder to do in America, in government, than amend the Constitution. Not like California, where you put a referendum on the ballot and the Constitution's amended. No. This is really hard. Why? Because it's the foundation of our country from a governmental standpoint. And it should be hard. It should require consensus. Look at the 17 amendments that have passed. They all had broad consensus at the time they were passed. And by and large, with 1 or 2 exceptions, most Americans agree with it today. So, Senator, you're saying we need convention of states to fix America. Yes, but not the way you think. Do I think we can propose a balanced budget amendment and get 38 states to ratify it? No, I do not. Can we propose term limits and get 38 states to ratify it? No, I do not. Not right now. Can we limit the power of the federal government right now? Maybe. Depends what. Won't be much. Why? Because we're a divided country. So, well, then, Senator, why should we do this? Because there are some things we can do. I learned this when I was in the Senate, and you had to get consensus. That you have to get control, to get reform, you can't, as we were talking about before, you can't take something away. No one's going to vote for take something away. There's too much vested interest in Washington. They're not going to take anything away. You can try. Good luck. So, well, then what's the point? Well, you stop it from getting worse. Right? The old saying, when you're in a hole,
Stop digging.
that's what we're going to do here. So we're not going to fill the hole. We're not going to take over 100 years of federal government increasing its power and destroying the republic and turn it around with one convention. Anybody who says that's going to happen is just, or says that, horrible things are going to happen and make it worse. No, it's not how a convention of states will work. It's not how this process, which is supremely difficult, operates.
How can you say that with such conviction? We don't know that.
Yeah,
Quite
we
honest
do.
with you, I don't know that.
Well, do you know absolutely?
I don't trust anybody
Yeah.
in our federal government.
Yeah, that's
I don't even
dangerous
trust our
position.
Republicans
Yeah,
to
see,
do the right thing.
There was an article written the other day, and I'm not saying you're this, but this is a problem in America. If Americans don't trust our institutions, we're toast. If you trust nobody, then you know what you can do? Nothing. No change can happen because you don't trust anybody to make a change. So you're stuck. And this is the problem I see with so many Republicans. I don't trust this person. I don't trust this person. Okay, what's your answer to the problem? There's no answer. If you don't trust anybody to do anything, then you can do nothing. This is a problem that you think there's corruption behind the scenes or there's this behind the scenes.
I didn't say I didn't trust anybody.
Who do you trust?
I trust Trump. I do. I know based on your comments earlier.
So you now, I mean, I hate to say this, but it sounds like you're sort of, we need a dictator, we need a king.
No, I don't think so.
Well, okay, then what do you trust him to do and how to do it?
I trust him to protect us. I trust him, I think he's got our best interests in mind. I do trust him. I trust him inherently.
Okay.
And,
Do you trust me if he says I want to eliminate the filibuster?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. I don't. I think he's wrong, I think he's gravely wrong. And thankfully for your senator,
He's absolutely,
he's not gonna get it done.
right.
What?
He's absolutely right.
I don't know if you just listened to everything I just said. Did you listen to what I said?
Yeah.
Okay, and why do you think it's right? Do you know that everything that Republicans will pass with a filibuster being taken away will be repealed when the Democrats get power, and it'll be worse. So let me just finish. I told you before, John McCain, Republicans had a chance to eliminate Obamacare with a simple majority, and we didn't do it. I can tell you program after program that we had a chance because of reconciliation to eliminate or cut federal programs, and we don't. So here's what happens. Let me trust someone who's sort of gotten it right for a while. Democrats get control, here's what they do. Guaranteed. Now I know there's a guarantee. Why? Because they say so. So they will first eliminate the filibuster. They will pack the court with 4 new Supreme Court justices. They will admit Puerto Rico and DC as states to make it almost impossible for Republicans to get control again. They will pass a voting rights law that says all federal elections will be like California. Maximum fraud opportunities. Once they pack the Supreme Court, DC will pass a law that says guns are banned. And the Supreme Court will say that's fine. You want to lose the Second Amendment? Eliminate the filibuster. 100% chance. Don't shake your head. 100% chance. You're just wrong. No, you're wrong.
Senator, can I back you up for a second?
I
I just came from DC. If they were serving poop and vanilla ice cream and had a vote on it, the Democrats would say, well, we can't eliminate the brown. I kid you not, it's that divisive. They are that
Okay,
radical.
hold on. Why do you say it wrong?
That they would get
Tell me
rid of
why you say
guns
it
the
wrong.
second they get a chance.
Tell me.
Can I respond?
Go ahead. Tell me why I'm wrong.
So, I'm not gonna say that you're wrong. And just to try to tamp things down, I respect you a great deal. And I think you are a patriot, and I appreciate you.
And I'm very passionate. Because I'm
And
concerned
you are,
about the future.
and you know what? I like people like that, and that's one of the reasons I like Trump. Okay, he's passionate also. My response to what you just said is that Republicans are always playing defense. And from my perspective, the best defense is a good offense. Okay? So I think you can win the game by having a good offense. In other words, keep them off the field. And I think that's what the game plan should be and could be if we eliminate the filibuster and if we start pushing things through that actually make sense. And I think once people see that things are finally making sense again in America, that they're not going to be voting Democrat anymore.
What's the longest period of time that one party has been able to maintain control in the House, Senate, and President?
Half a second. Democrats.
What's the longest period of time?
I don't know,
Not long.
4 years, 2 years.
Well, Congress, the Democrats controlled Congress for 40 years. That was the longest time. Presidency flips every few, and you get 2 or 3 in a row, maybe, if you're lucky. But recently, no. They flip. And so the Senate, it flips, it changes. So you're gonna have those 3 dials, President, House, Senate, and once in a while, it's gonna come up all 3. In fact, more often than not, you see what are called wave elections. You're seeing an increasing number of wave elections. So you can say, okay, you can do it, and maybe you win an election, but you know what? people want change sometimes, even if things are going well. They forget that the reason they're going well is because of the people they elected, and they think, well, someone goes out and promises something more. The other side will get control, and here's my point. Once they get control, we'll never get it back if they have majority vote.
Well, I give it to them, they're gonna do it, we know that they're gonna do it. So why don't we put the pedal to the metal and go after it?
Because I don't wanna shoot the Republic and have this bloodstains on my watch. If they're gonna destroy the Republic, it's on them as a party, not us. And let me assure you, there'll be a tremendous retribution against them for doing this. It may not be right away, but it will happen. And I don't wanna be a party to it. You may want to. You wanna destroy the Republic, do it.
I don't want
But then do it. Let me assure you, you will do it. And you say, well, wait a minute. There are other states that have, they don't have filibusters in their House and Senate, but here's what they have. You know what they have? They have a balanced budget. States don't go crazy one side or the other. Why? Because they can't spend money with no consequence. Once you give them the power and you give it to them to go ahead and do it, they will dramatically expand the size and scale of the federal government. They will destroy the country. And everyone will look at, well, the Republicans did it. The conservatives did it. They're the ones who broke it. I'm sorry, not doing it. And you can say, well, if they do it and they destroy the country, we'll get it back. And we'll have the power then to repeal it. Name one time we've taken away a benefit. Name once. I can name one. It's when I did it, but I got a bipartisan consensus to do it. It was welfare. I'm telling you. Look, and I don't mean to be. What do you do for a living?
I'm an engineer. I've got 3 master's degrees
Great.
and multiple professional registrations.
In what field of engineering?
What's that?
What field of engineering?
I'm registered in 2 different disciplines, civil and environmental. So
And if you were building a civil engineering project, and I came up to you and said, I have a better way of doing that, what would you say?
I listen to you.
I'd listen to you too, and I am listening to you. But if I gave you ideas that you knew would be dangerous and structurally unsound, would you tell me so?
Yeah, I probably would. I would give you my opinion about them, as you are doing. Again, I respect you, but I'm here to tell you that I'm not an idiot either. And I'm listening, and I feel like I'm pretty well educated about what we're talking about here. And I just fundamentally disagree with some.
So play it out.
Well, if they did away with the filibuster, I think right now we hold a great advantage, and I think Trump is exactly right. We go for it. We get all of these structural changes implemented,
Like what?
including voter ID. That would be a big one. So right
You
there.
know, most states have voter ID already.
Many of the bigger states do not. So, I mean, I
Spain
just
does,
read a
New York
thing today
does.
that California had 17,000 illegal immigrant
You think
CDLs.
we're gonna win California?
No.
See, the states that don't have voter ID, by and large, are states we're not gonna win anything. But go ahead.
I think that would change a lot. I'll give you an example.
The swing states all have voter ID.
Minnesota is a good example. Okay, so Minnesota is always tight, but there are, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands.
Okay,
of
I don't wanna get
aliens.
into rabbit trail of voter ID. What else?
I think, I kind of prepared to discuss.
Well, if you're convinced that this is gonna change things, upon what basis do you say that if you don't know what's gonna change?
Well, I think the voter ID change will be a big one. I think maybe they could look at a balanced budget amendment.
You know what it takes to get a balanced budget amendment passed?
It'll take 2/3.
2/3 of the House and Senate. So
Right.
changing the filibuster doesn't affect
But
it.
he seems to want it.
I understand that, but if they see that we're winning,
Who sees we're winning?
Everybody,
The
the
left
country,
sees we're winning?
the country.
What are we winning? You haven't told me anything we've won yet. What are we winning?
We could open, the door to more drilling. We could, reduce.
The president could do that already.
We could reduce environmental regulations.
He's doing that already.
We could go further.
No,
we
actually
could-
not.
We could
No, the
reduce.
a lot of the things
many
you're talking about, the president has the power to do,
Well,
and is doing. Hold on, the president has the power to do and is doing. But in 4 years, when the president takes over, they change them all, right? So,
If
that's
it's-
my point.
If it's a Democrat, they will change them. That's my point.
Sir, with all due respect, the things you just laid out are one thing, voter ID, which again, I'm not sure there's any swing state.
Reduction in, laws that are prohibiting, companies from, or limiting companies' ability to start and grow. Reduction in DEI, I can tell you, my book that I wrote, my entire adult life has been tainted by DEI.
Yeah, and
because I'm a white
again,
man.
I would
As a
argue
fellow
that-
engineer, you've given your view with a few supporting items. You have a few more supporting items. I recommend closure and move on to the next.
Okay, so let me move on. So, one of the things I think can happen is an amendment to limit the Supreme Court to 9 members, which I think would certainly protect, and arguably, the First Amendment from being repealed, because the left, if you get 4 more Ketanji Brown Jacksons on the court, the Second Amendment is gone. So, I think it's important to make sure that the left never gets that power. So we can argue whether you should get rid of it now or then. That's really not my argument. I'm sorry I actually went down that rabbit trail. You're right, sir. The argument is we should stop anybody from having that power, right? We should protect the United States Senate and the consensus requirement in the Constitution, which was, the Constitution was, and how many times is the word democracy appear in the Constitution? Never. We are not a majoritarian country. It's not the mob rules. It's not the majority rules. And they had rules in place to make sure that that was the case, and they have been removed. One of them, the one place that is left is Article 5, Section 2. And so, number one, I mentioned amendments. Let me tell you a little more foundation. If the states call a convention, you will send a shockwave through Washington, D.C. Because they treat you like dirt. You want to run for state legislature, Dale? They're going to treat you like garbage. They're going to tell you what to do. They're going to tell you how to jump and how high, because that's how the federal government operates when it comes to the states. Now, all of a sudden, you've asserted yourself and you said, excuse me, we're in charge. Why? Because you are. You were meant to be. Who created the federal government? The states. You would not know that today, would you? The kid grew up and is beaten up on his parents. That's what's happening. And so, you're not going to say, I'm back in charge. I'm the guy that's going to call shots and put limits on you and have a convention, which is the second reason I'm really excited about this. We're going to have a national debate about federal power, state power, and individual rights. We haven't had that debate since the founding. Most people have no idea of federalism. They have no idea what the Constitution says. Why? Because we don't teach it. If we have a convention of states, guess what's going to happen? Every state, every high school is going to require people, they're going to be a demand that they teach the Constitution. What's this debate all about? What's federalism all about? What's states' rights all about? All of this stuff is now going to be front and center in America at a time when America really needs an opportunity to take a breath and sort of say, okay, where are we going? What can we do? So reasserting your authority, educating the American public, bringing up ideas. I was talking about the West. So many states in the West have all this federal lands, which the federal government controls. Some states, like 90% of the states, controlled by the federal government. I don't know anybody in Pennsylvania that knows that. I don't know anybody in New York that knows that. I mean, average people. They don't. Having a discussion about how we deal with federal lands. The West will have a chance to have a voice. What better forum will the West have, which has a bunch of states and very few people, than to go to a forum where one state, one vote. You have as many votes as California, New York, Texas, and Florida. And so your voice is just as loud as theirs, and you have the opportunity to assert issues that you want to have considered. I'm not saying you'll pass them, you won't. But sometimes, I mean, this convention will last 3, 4, maybe 5 months, I don't know. There'll be hearings. There'll be amendments proposed. They'll be debated. You'll have experts come up and talk about it. I mean, this will be a discussion like we've never had in American history. And the Congress and the President are scared to death of it. Because they don't want Americans to take back control of their government. They don't want to be told, no, I can't do this. And no, all due respect, and I talked to Donald Trump last night. All due respect, Donald Trump doesn't want that. But you know what Donald Trump may want? And I think he's interested in doing it, is a legacy that does put controls on Washington, D.C. in the future. Because I think he sees the problem. He's trying to fix as much himself now, and I agree with you. I think he's trying to do the right thing. But I think he also knows that the wrong person with the power that is in the presidency can do great damage, and he doesn't want that to happen. So I'm not saying he's going to endorse convention of states, but he put out a tweet the other day that was very positive about convention of states. So I'm just saying that there's a lot of good reasons to do this other than passing amendments. And I do believe, and the reason I brought up the Supreme Court is I believe that that is an amendment that actually could get ratified. Why? Because it's an amendment in the kind that I just talked about earlier, which is, it doesn't change anything, but it stops something bad from happening. Packing the court would be a very bad thing. Even a lot of Democrats feel that way. But as the progressives continue and the socialists continue to gain power in that party, they will use anything that they need to get power. And this is why we have to do that. Yes, sir.
I took your comment about not taking things, you can't take things away that will never pass.
Oh, you can, it just doesn't happen.
But would an amendment that got rid of an omnibus bill and said, you have to pass
Omnibus, okay.
them one at a time, because
Yeah.
we know how they pour all that stuff on.
And I know this is really, it's gonna make your head explode and you're gonna be unhappy. But I'm just, and I've been there, and this is how it works. I talked about it before. 70% of spending in Washington has nothing to do with the omnibus. Almost now, add interest on the debt, it's close to 80%. Okay, what do I mean? If you take interest on the debt, Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare, food stamp programs, entitlements. Do you realize entitlements, Congress doesn't pass anything to fund them. They are automatically funded. An omnibus is the 20% defense and all the domestic programs that are being shut down because of not being funded. That's just 20% of the budget, maybe 22% of the budget. And so you're saying, well, if we get rid of omnibuses on this, we're gonna fix this. No, you're not. And there's certain money that we're gonna spend with discretionary spending, we darn well better, because it's our Defense Department, our State Department, our Treasury, all the departments are funded here. Now, the departments spend a lot of their time administering this. Department of Health administrates Medicaid. Treasury administrates Social Security. But the programs within all these departments are funded in an appropriations process. in which is there's an at the end of the year, there's 13 appropriation bills or 14, I forget which now, changes. And you're supposed to pass one every year, and if you don't, by September 30th, they get rolled up into a ball and they pass it all at once. That's what happens. So eliminating them, rolling them together, okay, Congress has to pass them one at a time, maybe that will save some money, probably will, but it's pennies compared to, and where's the growth? If you look at domestic discretionary spending or spending on other military programs, they, during Biden, they went up a lot. But generally speaking, and at the end of Trump, they went up a lot because of COVID. But generally speaking, they don't grow much above the rate of inflation. They do a little bit. Now, where the growth is here.
I'm not saying that it's gonna solve the problem completely. What I'm trying to say is, if you remember, there was the bridge to nowhere in Alaska. All these things, these ports going on. Now, if you get rid of that, if they have to stand up and collect votes from everybody,
Yeah.
that may stop in their mindset to change a little also.
You're arguing over pennies. It's like the Bible verse. You're arguing over the sliver in someone's eye, the plank in your eye. The plank in the eye is this. You're arguing about this. Okay, let's say we cut it by 10%. Okay, what is it? We have a $4 trillion budget right now?
Can I have that 10%? You gotta start somewhere.
Great. Fine. Okay, I agree with you. Get rid of it, but there's nothing that convinces me that getting rid of an omnibus is actually going to reduce spending. There's no proof of that. I don't necessarily believe it would happen. You're worrying about things that I know people get wrapped around the axle about, but I'm telling you, as someone who's been there, voted on these things, was in leadership, that's not the problem. Okay? The problem is that Congress isn't doing their job. That's a problem. And I guess I'd like them to pass individual appropriation bills, yes, but that isn't going to solve anything, or it's going to solve very little of the problem. There are more fundamental problems here, okay? And so, getting back to the reasons for convention states. The convention of states is necessary to reassert state control, to educate the American public, to show that the states, in fact, are where the adults live in America now. We're going to propose things that are going to, anybody familiar with the Contract with America? I was in the House in 1993, and helped draft the Contract with America. I sat in the basement with Newt Gingrich and a few other people, and we drafted it. You know what the one thing that was required to get into the Contract with America? Had to have 75% approval.
Say that again.
Contract with America had to have 75% approval of America. You said it was a revolutionary document. No, it wasn't. Revolutionary documents don't pass. Documents that have and aren't great election winners. What helps is to pass things where there is a consensus, and you focus the American public on the consensus, and we did, and we won. And so it's an opportunity for the states to be the bridge to find consensus. And if it's only 1 or 2 or 3 amendments that are passed, and maybe they don't even, maybe all of them don't get ratified, the people of America come away looking to you, the states, as the vehicle by which we save the republic. All right? And so I'm just saying, look, there's a risk, and we can talk about that, runaway convention, all that kind of stuff. I happy to talk about all those particulars. But we were at a crisis time, and it's the old idea that if you keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result, you're going to lose. Okay? Yes, sir.
You said that you don't really believe that a lot of the things in our resolution could pass. What about polling that showed that these elements have across the board 60, 70, 80, 90% approval of the public?
Yeah, I don't mean that they won't get proposed, but
That gives you hope to try.
yes, it raises use this issue, I'm just saying that, I think all those, I think a balanced budget might be proposed, or some spending limitation be proposed. But let's look at the states that have to pass, okay? I'll try to go right to left. You're gonna need, remember, 13 states can block it. I'll start with Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, a lot of those states up there. New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Illinois, Washington, Oregon, California, New Mexico, Hawaii,
New Hampshire.
and
New Hampshire.
well, New Hampshire has a Republican governor, Republican legislature. But, so that's 14 right there, and I haven't mentioned, Minnesota, I didn't mention Pennsylvania, didn't mention Michigan, didn't mention Colorado. I mean, it's hard. So to say, well, can we get term limits? Not right now, probably not. But we might get close. We might get the issue paid attention to. And again, the gentleman's right. He was talking about momentum, talking about winning, talking about changing the dynamic. I think this changes the dynamic. Okay? And so, no, you're not going to get everything at once because you have to have consensus to get it, right? And right now you may say 75%, but once the left starts spending all that money, right, you won't. You certainly won't in those things. Yes, sir.
With all due respect, Senator, you are looking at all the situation, you're presenting it to us from the conservative side. We are all conservative in this room. There are no conservatives around. There's lots of conservatives in South Dakota. There's not too many conservatives in California. South Dakota has 1.5 million people population. California has 36 million people population. There are very few conservatives over there. And I was born in Afghanistan, and I grew up in Afghanistan. And what we were talking earlier about, in 1920s, there was a very strong Communist Party of America in New York City. They owned the Columbia University. Actually, the president of Columbia University was communist, which ran from the Europe because he was going to be arrested. And they put him right in the presidency already. A reason for that? To brainwash the children. So the Communist Party of America in 1920s, they come up with ideas how to destroy the America, because they want to change America into communism. First, they know that Americans, people like us, we will never accept the word communism and socialism. So they have to start using different words, code words for those things.
Progressive.
One of them is progressive, one of them is liberal, and democracy. Do you remember Joe Biden was talking that he's going to be first progressive president of America? In the code words, it means he's going to be first communist president of America. And of course, in order they need to brainwash kids, and even because they don't brainwash adults as much. They created the teachers' union, like you said. And they were recruiting the thousands and thousands and hundreds of young people, men and women, to go to school to become teachers and brainwash the kids. They need to destroy the religion in America. They know they cannot destroy the church from the outside, they very soon figure it out. They decide to destroy it from the inside. So they start recruiting the young men to go in the clergy and became the priests, ministers, and so on. One person was very good at it. One person recruited over 1,200 young men to become the priests, and ministers, and pastors. They even were so successful. They had 4 cardinals in Washington, Vatican, which were communists. They need to destroy the family, because family is the base of the whole of the society.
Like I said, I wrote a book about that.
Right. So they need to destroy all the stuff. So they start promoting the abortions. They start promoting the divorces. There was cases when there was women who were 50 abortions, and there were people who were married 7 times. So they need to destroy all this stuff, that stuff to destroy the America, change it into socialism. They need to destroy the United States Constitution. They realized in 1920.
How are they doing that?
They're gonna use the Article 5 to destroy the United States Constitution.
Have they?
Now, obviously, we're talking about that more and more.
No, have they?
Well,
Are you saying the Constitution of America is in really great shape right now?
Constitution of America is larger than any socialist government.
Is what?
Any socialist constitution. American constitution is obviously great. Problem is not constitution, problem is the people who are not following the constitution. And
Okay, I'm gonna interject right here. And I didn't get back to this point, I apologize, because I sort of jumped to the conventions. So, what changed the Constitution was, what changed our country was, number one, the 17th Amendment. Number two, as the gentleman said back there, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, they tried to pack the Supreme Court in the 1930s, they failed, but what they did is they bullied some of the members to retire, and they were able to put their justices on, and they rewrote the Constitution by Supreme Court edict. They took the General Welfare Clause, they took the Commerce Clause, they put all these different clauses, and they inserted things in there. They took, the right to privacy doesn't exist in the Constitution. Yeah, the right to illegal search and seizure, but that's not the right to privacy, which was the right to have an abortion. That's what they came up with, right? All of these things were created by who? The left. The left, repeat this, with all due respect, sir, the left is never going to use Article 5, Section 2 to change the country. They are scared to death someone will use Article 5, Section 2. Every change that the left has made to destroy and undermine the Constitution and empower Washington, D.C. was done from the top down, not the bottom up. This process is a bottom-up process, not a top-down process. Right to abortion, top down. Right to gay marriage, top down. Right to, regulate, people's water in South Dakota because it eventually ends up in the ocean, top down. I mean, Kilo, top down. All of these decisions were because I got 5 people on the court. It's not because of Article 5, Section 2. Never been used. Can't blame it, never been used. What's happened is the left has realized that they can't win a popular election, so what they do is they get the court to do their bidding. That's why the first thing they're going to do, if they eliminate the filibuster, is pack the court. Then you will see the Constitution melt away. Listen to Ketanji Brown Jackson. Listen to her. She does not read the Constitution and determine what the Constitution says. She reads some liberal rag and says, this is what America needs. You want a bunch of people who see the Constitution as an impediment to their agenda, not something that they're going to interpret, then don't do a convention of states. If that's what you want, because that's what's going to happen. Yes. Somebody else?
Well, I was going to just kind of focus the conversation a little bit on process.
Okay.
And I see you do have a flyer here that talks about that a little bit. But you just clarify, if you do call a convention of states, how are you picking the delegates?
Yep.
How many votes does each state get?
Yep.
And can you go beyond the original 3 purposes that you lay out in your resolution?
Yeah. Oh, great question. So, first off, how do you pick the delegates? Well, I'll start with that. So you pick the delegates. Each state passes a law or resolution, depending on what they want to do, to decide how their delegates are chosen. Wyoming's already done that, even though they haven't passed this resolution. They've done. Many states have already passed resolutions or laws that lay out how their delegates are selected. The vast majority of them are the legislature chooses the delegates. Okay? Some allow the governor to have a choice. Some lay out partisan makeup of the delegates, right? Majority, minority. So that's number one. States also can pass and puts limits on their delegates. They can limit their delegates to only voting on subject matter that is in the resolution in which calls the convention. Right? So they have what's called a faithful delegate provision. And if any delegate votes to exceed their authority, they're subject to recall and, in some cases, criminal penalties. They can, in their delegate resolution, or in their enacted resolution to call for the convention, they can say, well, our delegation cannot vote for this, or this, or this. They can lay out prescription of what delegates can do. It's up to the legislature to do that. They have the power to bind their delegates, okay? All that is under the control of the state legislature. Secondly, once the legislatures are appointed, they come to the convention, and you say, well, how do we know it's one state, one vote? Anybody know how many conventions of states, not Article 5, Section 2 conventions, but state conventions there have been in the history of our country?
42.
Okay, and prior to that, there was, I think, another 40 or 50. So I understand most people in this room are not familiar with Convention of States. We haven't had too many, but I don't know. I know one of the most recent ones was the Colorado River Compact. That was done by a Convention of States. Each state passed a resolution that's involved with Colorado River, passed a resolution to call a convention. One state, one vote. California got one vote. Arizona got one vote. California was 15 times the size of Arizona at the time, probably more. And they met, they convened, they had hearings, they came up with a proposal, was sent back to the states for ratification. In that case, the ratification required all states to approve it. But in our case, because it's a convention of states, under Article 5, Section 2, it requires 3/4 of the states to approve it. So the Constitutional Convention was a convention of states. One state, one vote. Every state at that convention had one vote.
Is
And by the
that
way,
for moving forward, is that set in stone or can that be modified?
So there's two ways in which a legislative body operates. There's two sets of rules. In the Congress and the state legislature. One is the written rule, right? You have your rules at the beginning of a session or the beginning of a convention, you pass a set of rules. Every legislature does it. Can one legislature bind the second one? No. So you say, well, we don't know what they're gonna do. Well, you don't know what your legislature's gonna do next year. You don't know what rules to pass. They can change them. You say, well, we don't know. Well, that's right, we don't know. But what's the other rule that tends that is part of a legislature or a convention? Precedent. So you'll say, you'll have a question about what a rule means or how you proceed on something, and the parliamentarian will turn around and say, well, the precedent in this body is this. And just like in a court, where a court operates exclusively on precedent, what the preceding court thought, Roe versus Wade, they overturned a precedent. So it has the force of law. You can say, well, it can change. Well, you can change the written law too. But that doesn't mean the law is not significant or important. It is. It guides the court, it guides the legislature, it guides a president, the precedent by which you exercise your power. And so the precedent in every single convention of states in the history of our country is one state, one vote. Never been a convention that wasn't one state, one vote, or one colony, one vote. And so when you go into this convention, the presumption will be it's one state, one vote. Can they change that? Yes. Would they change that? No. And you say, we don't know that. Yes, we do. Why do we know that? And let me explain why. Because there are more small states than big states, by like 2 or 3 to 1. How many small states are going to go into a convention where you have how is South Dakota going to go into a convention where you have the same vote as California and say, nope, I'm going to give California more votes than me? You would be tarred and quartered when you came home. It won't happen. Do we know? Yes, we do know. Because nobody in a position like that wants to commit suicide. And that's what they'd be doing. So that's how we know there'll be one state. Okay?
Now, if they did try to change it,
There'd be a vote.
Could they withdraw and say we're going to cancel the convention because we're not coming in with the president?
So California, if they want to not, look, I suspect there might be a state or two who doesn't participate.
Mm-hmm.
The Go back to the original constitutional convention. Anybody know about that?
Yes.
What state didn't participate?
Rhode
Rhode Island. We went ahead anyway, right? So there may be some protests, doesn't matter. You got 34 states, you can have a convention, and if the other 16 don't want to show up, that's their business. You still need 26 votes to pass a resolution. And by the way, the convention will have a rules package. What will that rules package look like? Well, believe it or not, there are people who actually drafted draft rules packages. You can go look at them online. What were they based upon? Previous conventions of states, right? And how legislatures operate. Legislatures are gonna pick the delegates. And so, what rules are they gonna use? They're gonna use rules that they use in their legislature. Now, there's some differences, but everybody knows how legislative bodies operate, and so they'll have a discussion and figure it out. There's not gonna be something ridiculous or out of the ordinary. There's gonna be something that everybody feels comfortable with, okay? So, you have selection, one state, one vote. What happens after that is they pass rules, and then they start considering amendments. And you say, what happens if somebody exceeds and offers an amendment that is out of order? Well, they get ruled out of order. They have a parliamentarian who looks at what? The resolution that calls the convention. That's the governing document for the convention. That's the constitution, if you will, for the convention. And the parliamentarians say, well, that is not germane under this. And the state will say, I object. Fine, they have a vote. Okay. You can say, well, they'll ignore that vote and add that. Well, then you have an issue that you have a debate as to whether this amendment is germane or not. I think again, do we know for sure? There's no risk of that happening. We don't know for sure. Okay? But here's what we do know. We know that it takes a consensus of Americans, 75, 80%, and 3/4 of the states to pass anything. And if this is seen as an illicit amendment, not within the four walls, they have a political problem, right? And you have probably a ratification problem. So, practically speaking, and plus, in many states, I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of states say, you can't vote for something that the parliamentary rules is outside the realm. Faithful delegate, right? So, you'll have controls internally, but the final external control is 38 states have to ratify. But I think there'll be plenty of, given the scrupulousness that is being applied to all of these votes, and there will be a right here in South Dakota, I have no doubt South Dakota will pass a law that limits their delegates to have to be faithful to the limitations of the convention, right? No doubt, most states have who have passed this. And I suspect when we get close, more states will do it. I am not the least bit concerned about that. Not the least bit concerned about that. Here's why. And if it has to go to the court, and it might, you say, well, the court wouldn't stick their neck in. Well, here's why I'm convinced it won't happen. We've had 400 and some odd convention of state resolutions passed in the history of our country. Over the 250 years of our country, over 400 resolutions have passed in all 50 states. Well, maybe not Hawaii, I think Hawaii has it. But all 49 states. Have we ever had a convention of states? Why?
Not enough.
Well, we had 400 resolutions passed. Why? Because
Same
they didn't have 38 that agreed. When you pass a law, Dale, in the House of Representatives, and it goes over to the Senate, and the Senate changes a word, does the governor sign it?
No.
Why?
Ratified by both.
Why? Because people need to know what the law is. Is it the House law or is it the Senate law? That's why we've never had a convention. Because people need to know what the convention's about. Why? Because it's limited to that. If it's not limited to that, then we would already have hundreds of conventions. they can aggregate anything and say, well, we'll have a convention. They don't, because if the language matters to call a convention, it matters at the convention. So that's the other reason, and I think it's a justiciable issue. That means the court can take it up. I don't think they will, because I don't think it's gonna happen. So, you propose amendments, 25 states have to vote. If it's proposed, 26, majority has to approve. It's then sent to the states for ratification. There's a time limit, usually 5 or 6 years, something like that, they'll set a time limit. And the Congress gets to set the mode of ratification. That's in Article 5. So that means there are 2 ways to ratify a constitutional amendment. One is the state legislatures pass it. 2 is by convention. So the state would come together as a legislature and put together a convention. They can design it any way they want to come together and vote on ratification. That's happened once for the 27 amendments. For all of the amendments that have been proposed, there's only been one, because some were not ratified, like the ERA. There's only been one time that a convention was held. It was the repeal of prohibition, because there was an urgent need of the public to get rid of that amendment, and they didn't want to wait for legislatures to convene and things like that, so they did it by convention because it was quicker. Yes, sir.
So
Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
I'm an engineer, like I said earlier. When we do problem solving, we write down assumptions on what it is that we're looking at. One of the big assumptions here is that that both sides, so it would just be Republicans, there would be Democrats at the convention also, that both sides are going to follow the rules. And that's one of the big busts for me.
You
Because
just talked about
I think, well, let's take the 2020 election for an example. So we had all these safeguards in place to make sure that the election would be done in a fair and reasonable manner, and yet
that. I hear what
everything,
you're saying.
everything.
Can I just pause, because you're talking about apples and oranges, sir.
No, we're
hold
talking
on.
about
Hold on one second, please.
government structures and rules.
Okay, this is not trusting. I understand you don't trust institutions and rules and things like that, but let me tell you why you can here. In order to get a convention of state, 34 state legislatures have to pass it. Every state legislature that has passed this resolution has one thing in common. You know what it is?
They want that resolution.
No. Republicans control both houses of the legislature. So, we passed in states like Wisconsin, which is not a Republican state by and large, it's a purple state. But the legislatures control, Democrats govern, but the legislatures control both bodies. If Wisconsin ever flips back to Democrat, you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna repeal this. Okay? So, what does that mean? At the time this resolution gets to 34, here's what we know. 34 states will either be completely or partially controlled by Republicans. So you say, well, people will cheat. Well, you have 16 blue states and you have 34 red states. And you say, well, we don't know what's gonna happen there. Well, yeah, we sort of do. Because 34 red states will outvote 16 blue states every time.
You're making assumptions.
What assumption am I making?
Well, you're assuming that a red state, like we are here in South Dakota supposedly, that, we're going to be voting in accordance with what we believe, Christian patriots believe. And to be quite honest with you, I don't trust our own state government. In a diehard red, solid red state here in South Dakota, I don't trust our own government here to do what they should be doing in regard to pretty much anything. And especially when they're selecting, one person to go to a convention of states.
It sounds to me like you're not for a republic, and that's fine. You don't have to be for a
I'm absolutely
republic.
for a republic.
But you don't trust the institutions of the republic.
I trust the founding principles of the country.
And what are the founding principles of the country?
Which assumed that we would have a moral and just people, and I don't know that we're there
And
anymore.
I would tell you that if you read the history of the Republic, and you read about the founders, they have the same question about themselves. The people writing about it had the same questions about the people at the Constitutional Convention.
So I want to make
No, we're all sinners.
I
Has been,
understand.
will be. The people at the convention were sinners. There were some really scoundrels at that convention, right? So the idea that they're moral and we're not, you don't think the founders understood that people coming along would be immoral and do bad things? That's why they made it hard.
Yeah, I know. Your
But you're ignoring that.
Your perspective is one of when you were, so we're all a function of the paths that we walked in life, right? And I respect yours, you've done a lot. You were able to build consensus with Democrats at the time when we were serving, and I respect that big time. My supposition here, or my belief, is that the Democratic Party of today is different than the Democratic Party that you dealt with at that time.
No. So you didn't listen to what I was saying. I described the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
I described what they would do if they get
These are-
power. I have no illusions about who the Democratic Party is. But in this situation, you're not listening to me. Because in this situation, the Democrats don't have the authority to do it.
I saw the 2020 election where they didn't have the authority to do what they did, but they still did it. And they still took the presidency.
What? 19. Kansas will pass it in January. And there's a reason for that. I get into it if you want. But they will definitely pass it in January. We have 2 other states that are close to passage. North Carolina is passing one house, not the other. Ohio is, we think we have the votes in both houses to pass it. And then, you look at states like South Dakota, it passed the Senate overwhelmingly, I think almost 2-1, and, we came short of the House. Wyoming passed over 2-1, Wyoming got the Senate, came up short of the House. I mean, there are a lot of states that are actively considering it, and I can tell you this, every left-wing, progressive, communist, socialist group in America is vehemently opposed to this. One of the things I knew when I was a legislator is, I'd study an issue. You know what else I'd study? Who's for it and who's against it. And if all the people that I normally think alike are against it, and I think I'm for it, then I better think twice about whether I should be for this. And so I will tell you this, every left-wing, progressive, socialist, communist group in America is scared to live in death about this.
How do you know you're over the target?
You're over it, and so you can say, well, I know better. Good, you know better. But I'm saying that you have, the Heritage Foundation is for this. You have most conservative, I go through conservative, I take an administration. Marco Rubio's for this. J.D. Vance is for this. Mike Huckabee's for this. Caroline Levitt's for this. Mike Johnson sponsored the bill when he led the charge of the bill when he was in the state legislature in Louisiana. You can say, well, all these are bad people. Fine. Okay, everybody's a bad person. But the bottom line is, we can't paralyze ourselves to do nothing as our country burns. We have to take action, and I'm of the belief this is actually the safest action we can take, because the unsafe action is to allow this to continue, and then we have really bad things happen in America. Not just hitting the fiscal wall, I'm talking really bad things happen in this country. And I'll tell you what, I want to try what the founders gave us to save our country from schism and disaster before it happens. At least try. Yes, sir.
So, 2 questions here. First one is, what does the Convention of States need from the South Dakota legislature? I know you said the Senate passed it, the House barely passed it.
The House did not pass it.
Excuse me, the House, yeah, almost passed it, but did not. Does it need to start all over again?
Yes.
The House, okay. These 22 states
So
that have,
it won't be,
the 22 states that have approved it, is there a time frame? Can the early
all the
ones
19
start
states,
dropping
all
off?
the 19 states that have approved it without a sunset clause. The only state that has a sunset clause was Texas, And Texas this year just approved it again with no sunset clause. So I mean, here's the other thing. Look at the states that have passed it. Texas, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Oklahoma, Tennessee, right? I mean, Louisiana, right? South Carolina, right? I mean, Nebraska, Wisconsin, North Dakota. I mean, I can go on. Alaska. What do they have in common? They share your values. You can say, well, they're all wrong. Great, they're all wrong. All the people they administrate, they're all wrong. Rush Limbaugh, he was wrong. Sean Hannity, he's wrong. Mark Levin, he's wrong. Everybody's wrong. I'm right. Good. Go for it.
So, I don't know if I'm right or not. We had a debate about the convention 5 years ago, and one of the people that I admire most politically who's passed since was arguing for it. And basically, the bottom line of his argument was that, this was the last ditch. In other words, we're on our way down, and there's no other way. This has to be done. And I guess I'm not at that point. And,
You know what? If you take that position, I respect that. No, I do. I respect that. If you think things can get better, then fine.
The
Don't do
risk
it.
is too great right now, because the other side will be there, and they will cheat. They'll do whatever they need to. And what they're going to gun for, pun intended, is our Second Amendment. And they will
With all due
do
respect,
anything to make sure
Yeah,
that
with all
that
due
goes
respect,
away.
they will never use
Why?
Do you
why
think
has
38
it
states are
right
gonna
now?
pass a limitation on the Second Amendment? I mean, what world? I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, that's not this country. I don't know what country you're talking about, but it's not this country. 23 states.
How did Joe
Out of
Biden get
23
80 million
states,
votes?
excuse me, that's not a one state, one vote vote. If it was a one state, look at the country. It's all red. Joe Biden won because he won a bunch of cities. He won a bunch of states that are big states with populated with dense cities. That's not this convention. This convention is the most favorable ground upon which conservatives can act.
How did Joe Biden become president?
I just answered that question.
They
Sometimes
cheated.
I don't think you're listening to me. I really don't.
I-
Because look at the map of the United States
You're not
in
listening
which
to
Joe
me.
Biden
They
won.
can't be trusted.
No, sir. Look at the states.
Point made.
We came to listen to Mr. Santorum.
No, that's fine. I'm happy to engage. What's that?
Can I jump in for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay, sir, what you're talking about is you're talking about voters and that they, let me finish, they rigged the elections. I agree with that, I know that. But this will not be an election where people go and vote. They can't rig it, there's no machines
We don't know
involved. This is
We do.
the
that.
legislature.
No, we don't.
No,
It's been adjudicated, the Supreme Court sets the parameters, there's so
Okay,
many
so
courts
I
adjudicated.
encourage you to go,
we're
do you
talking
respect,
about different things.
Shirley, give me a second. Do you respect Justice Scalia?
Yeah.
Justice
I
Scalia
respect
made-
you too.
What's that?
I respect you too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But Justice Scalia debated this issue back in 1979. And American Enterprises to Reform. Look it up, you can find it. He debated 3 other law, he was a law professor. And he talked about it, and in fact, the example I used about Congress repealing Christmas was his. He said, yes, there's a risk. I agree with you, there is a risk. But his calculation was that the risk was minute, and the threat was severe. And I'm just telling you what he said.
Sure.
Okay, you can shake your head, you disagree, that's fine. But he went through as to why the risk was minute. I've gone through why the risk is minute. And yet, and you say, so it must be, the only thing I can think of is you don't think that the risk of collapse of the federal government and of a schism in this country and of civil conflict in this country and of, look, we are a country in decline. It is simply a matter of time. And you say there's no risk. I mean, that I won't take a risk. I look at it as you're standing across the street, your house is on fire. it's burning. Anybody don't agree that America's house is on fire? Anybody disagree with that?
Trump
Does
is-
anybody disagree that a house is on fire? Okay,
I think the
I
house was
think-
on fire. but-
I think, out
Okay,
of respect for
so-
everybody here, we gotta let Rick.
okay, well,
Do this, Tom.
I have no problem with him countering me, I really don't. And I respect that, but here's what I'm saying. Maybe I'll come back in 3 years and we can talk again, okay? And maybe and all the things you say are gonna happen when they don't, and we can have that discussion, and maybe you'll have your faith in some other person. But, I don't have faith in individuals, right? I don't have faith in one person to fix America. It's not gonna happen. It won't happen. One person's not gonna fix this country. I don't care who that person is. And by the way, he's got 3 years, and after this year, he's not gonna have very much power at all because he's a lame duck president. Okay? I just know how these things go. And so you can say, I trust it, fine. Hold your position. Let me come back and talk to you in a couple of years. Hopefully we'll pass South Dakota, and I may not be back here, but I just want you to remember the things, the promise you think you have as how Trump is gonna change things, and then the reality, he had 4 years to do it. He didn't. Everything he did got changed back. In fact, many of the things he did caused him to lose. Here he is again. What happened? Well, we had, what happened? Every election that Donald Trump has been president, actually not just president, any election cycle in which Donald Trump has been the leader of the party, when Donald Trump is not on the ballot, we lose. That's just true. So what does that mean? That the midterm election probably isn't gonna be great, which means we may lose the House. God will lose the Senate because the map is pretty good for us. But that means he's probably not gonna be able to get anything passed, even though he has, right now, at least the majority get his reconciliation things done, and other things that actually are positive for the country. He probably will lose that power in 2 years. I'm just saying, putting your faith in one man who, arguably, in some cases, look at tariffs. I think the Supreme Court, I wouldn't be surprised if the Supreme Court was 9-0 or 8-1 or 7-2 to strike down what the president's done on tariffs. Because the president is not a king. He can't just wave his arm and say, Article 1, Section 1, Paragraph 1, Sentence 1 of the Constitution doesn't apply to me, right? And I can levy taxes if I want to on anybody. If you listen, and I listened to all 2.5 hours of the court debate, Trump lost, and you could hear it in the voices of the justices. And I say that to you because putting your faith in one man, that he's gonna be able to do something that no one man in the history of America has been able to do, and do it within the Constitution, which you say you care about, then I think you're gonna be gravely disappointed. Why? Because the president, under Article 2, doesn't have the power to do what you want done. He doesn't. And you know what? The court will stop him from doing it. And so even though you say, I believe he's a just man, he can do all the right things, he can't do all the right things. He can't do everything that you want him to do, because he doesn't have the power to do it.
He can if the people are behind him.
No, he can't. That's tyranny, my friend.
No.
No, it is.
I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is that if he keeps winning, so you just mentioned that, he.
Do you realize he just lost
When he's
elections
not-
he just lost elections in Virginia and in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania? Do
Where
you realize in
where he
Pennsylvania,
was not on the ballot, which is what.
he's
you
not gonna be
said.
on the ballot again?
Right. So,
He'll never be on the ballot again.
I understand that.
So don't use that as an excuse because he'll never be on the ballot.
Well, the people that he has in advance, will be on the ballot in the future.
But they're not gonna be on the ballot next year.
And
All right, in Pennsylvania, I come from Pennsylvania, I love Pennsylvania. We lost everything in Pennsylvania. We got crushed in Pennsylvania, and let me finish. And by all respects, I would think you would say Trump is winning right now. He's winning big right now, and we got crushed. So I'm just saying, I hear what you're saying, and I don't want to really debate this anymore because it's not about convention states,
It's time to
and that's what we're
move on.
here to talk about.
It's time
But
to
I'm just
move on.
saying, sir, come back and see me in a couple of years. Yes, sir.
Yeah, question. So I saw that Biden proposed a amendment, a so-called equal rights amendment. He wanted to bring to a constitution.
He
And
wanted
so
to
the-
resuscitate
Yeah.
the Equal Rights
Bring it
Amendment.
back. And then Newsom also proposed the 28th Amendment to restrict, not remove the Second Amendment, kind of restrict it.
Yeah.
So I do see Democrats wanting to use the system as well. My question is, I like the 3/4 that you talked about, it's high threshold. That'll keep some of those. I guess my overarching question is, if it's a 3/4 threshold, which is high, do you think the makeup of America today is more likely to reach that 3/4 threshold in leftist moderates, or more likely to reach that 3/4 in conservatives?
Remember, it's not 3/4 of America, it's 3/4 of the states.
Of the states? Is it
So
more
do I
likely to be
believe
a
that
moderate,
3/4 of the
liberal, or conservative?
So you have arguably 33 states that are red or reddish, right? 33 states.
I said conservative, not red.
Well, most,
There's a difference.
you can argue,
Yeah.
well,
Big
you
difference.
can argue, depends what you mean by conservative. I don't happen to believe that MAGA is necessarily conservative, okay? I mean, this is not. I mean, there's something, MAGA has a lot of things that are not traditional conservative thought, just period. I mean, Donald Trump, I saw Donald Trump, I played golf with him not too long ago, and he just was laying into me about being too pro-life. And he says, I'm pro-life light, okay? There are things that Trump can do and other Republican presidents have done, the pro-life movement, he's not doing, okay? So, I'm gonna say Republican, because Republicans is more likely to be conservative than MAGA in some cases, okay? And the vast majority of Republicans are conservatives, or MAGA, one or the other. You have some, you're an unusual state. Don't look at yourself as the normal state. You're a one-party state. And so as a result, you're gonna have people in the Republican Party who are in the Republican Party because they can't win as Democrats. And so don't say, oh, well, that's what I'm worried about. That's an anomaly for a state like this, right? You go to Hawaii, Tulsi Gabbard's dad, who I know, good guy, he's a Democrat. And why is he a Democrat? I talked to him. Because he can't win as a Republican. And you'd say he's a good guy, he's a Democrat. Heresy. No, you have to understand the state you're in. So I worry when people just sort of look at their own little universe and say, this is the way the world is. Let me assure you, I ran for president in 30 states. I campaigned in 30 states. I was on the ballot and tried to win elections in 30 states. You are not the typical state, okay? So saying that I don't trust people because there's bad people in our party, okay, does that mean Pennsylvania, are there more moderate? Yeah, a couple, right? Because they represent suburban districts in Philadelphia. And they couldn't win otherwise. And we're happy they're with us. So again, you have to look at the center of the party. You can't look at, because there's people on the right who drive me crazy. Like Rand Paul. He votes against everything. Everything the president wants to do, he votes against it. Because I'm pure, and I'm right, and I'm just. You know, that's not how legislatures function. You're not a one-man band. Legislatures are a body, and function as a body. And you're gonna have people here and here. What you gotta look at is the bell curve. You look at this. You can say, I worry about this, and I worry about this. Worry about this. Right? And that's what I worry about. And this is Republican. Basically conservative. And if you look at, right now, there are 29 state legislatures where the Republicans control both bodies. Right? There's like 13 Democrats, maybe 14. Okay? Up until the 2022 election, there was 32 or 33. I think it was 32 or 33 legislatures. So if you look at the ones that are there now, 29, I won't mention them, but they're 29, you're one of them. Add on top of that, Pennsylvania, Senate controlled by Republicans by 3 or 4 votes. Democrats have a 1-seat majority now. Michigan, up until the last election was divided. I don't know if it still might be divided in Michigan, but it's close. I mean, they're very close. So that gets you to 31. So you can go to Minnesota, pretty close. I'm trying to think of Virginia. Now, this last, the Trump effect, this last election cycle, Republicans were one down in the House and right now, the House was only up, the House of Delegates, the Senate wasn't up, I think we're 2 down in the Senate. But now we're like 12 down in the House, it's a wipeout, right? But that's a state that could, I know it's a purple state, but it could swing Republican, right? So, no, it's not rigged, they had that election. Do you realize, let me finish, you said it was rigged, and I'm gonna just explain.
You can't explain that.
Yeah, I can, because Trump lost the state by 6 points last year. If you look at the people with exit polls, and they ask people, who did you vote for in the last election, before they walk into the ballot box? And then the people who showed up, 40, and it was, if you throw out the people who either didn't vote or didn't remember. That's the voter, right? So 52% voted for Harris, 48% voted for Trump, which means 40, it was like 51.5, it was 3 points. The difference was 3.
You really think?
So more Trump voters showed up on election day, and yet our candidates lost by 13 points. So what does that mean? Trump gets voters who vote for him and don't vote for Republicans. That's just true. And you see it over and over and over again. I see it in my state. The election in my state, again, our voter turnout, Trump, I mean, you look at my state, 50% of the Democrats turned out to vote. Just look at the registration, look at their turnout. 50%, 30% of Republicans. We get crushed. Why? Because this is the reality. Trump energizes their side, and he can't get people who vote for him to go out and vote in elections where he's not on the ballot. That's the problem. And it's going to be the problem next year, it's going to be the problem the year after. Maybe J.D. Vance can be, or Marco Rubio, or somebody can be Donald Trump. I have my doubts. Having said that, there's still an opportunity, because even, we have a chance to get control. There's no way the Democrats get to 25, or even close to 25 seats in the legislatures under control. Again, as I was talking before, look at the map. You have all these red states. If you look at the number of states Trump won versus the number of states that Biden won, it's like 2-1. At a convention of states, that's the votes. California can cheat all they want, they get 1 vote. New York can cheat all they want, they get 1 vote. But in a presidential election, they get 57 votes, and they get 35 votes. And South Dakota gets 3. But in a convention state, they all get 1. This is the forum you want to be in, right? And the answer is, can we get to 38 states? I don't know. It's gonna take a lot of work, and it may not happen. But as I said before, there's no way anything they propose. You talked about Gavin Newsom, and I mean, he's just yanking us. He's just trying. Look, the left is really clever. They go out and do things to tweak many people who don't have a lot of faith in our institutions and get them to be suspicious of this process. They do it all the time. And they do it because they want to undermine this process. They cheat. They go out and say things and do things like, I want to pass a resolution to repeal this or limit the Second Amendment. How many states have passed that? None. How much money has been put behind it? None. What do you do it for? So you'd ask that question. So you'd have a doubt in your mind that they're going to actually do that. Ain't never going to do that. They're going to filibuster, pack the court, and eliminate the Second Amendment. That's how it happens. No other way it happens. There's no way anything like that in America will happen. And they do that. Katie barred the door of what this country's going to happen to this country. You want to start a war in this country? You do that, and trust me, they will try. Because you know what? They'll have a military on their side. I'm telling you, we're playing with fire here. You go ahead and say, there's no risk, or there's too much risk. I look at it this way. Your house is on fire, you're standing across the street, it's not a particularly busy street, and you decide, I'm afraid to cross the street to save my house. Is there a risk crossing the street? Every time. Is it a busy intersection? No, it's not. But you don't cross the street because of a remote chance something bad might happen. Yes, sir.
So, 2 questions and a comment. First of all, the 1 vote per state, is that because the last part of Article 5 says equal suffrage in the Senate? Question number 1.
No.
Okay. Question number 2, in the state of South Dakota, the legislators take an oath to not be affected by bribes, accept bribes, etc. for the votes. Then you follow the campaign contributions and their votes. You start to wonder if that's true. So how do we keep the Black Rocks, the West Coast, the left, East Coast, the Soros monies coming in to affect a vote from a delegate from any state that needs to be twisted in the wind to go against the American or the delegation that was sent by that state? And my last comment to you is, we're looking forward to meeting Doug Mastriano, who represents Gettysburg, and he'd appreciate it to give us a tour, but if he doesn't do it, I'll ask him.
So, the answer to the second one is you can't. You know why? There's something called the First Amendment. The First Amendment says you're allowed to speak. And that means you're allowed to spend your money the way you want on issues. I don't want to change that. I think people should have, no, I don't. Because you know, if you change it, we lose. Because the government will regulate us and they won't regulate the other side. It happens already. We regulate money in America. The federal elections are regulated. And guess who can't speak? Guess who can't fund a variety of different political causes? Corporations. Guess who can't? Unions. Every campaign finance law is written to favor left-wing groups over right-wing groups. This is true. So if you want to pass a law that regulates speech, we'll lose. Guaranteed. They will limit our speech. That's why when people talk about, well, we need to limit, speech on the internet because there's this bad speech and we have controls because there's awful speech out there. If the government has any say in what is said on the internet, we lose. We will absolutely positively. I don't like all the crap that's on the internet, but I'm for more speech, not regulated speech. We have never had it better as conservatives. We win not because we have the networks. We win because we have the internet and we're able to get our message out. And I am never to do anything. So I understand, I hate money in politics. People have a right, if their economic interests are being infected by the government, which they are every day, to speak up against that government. You say, oh, I look at people and I look at their contributions and see if they're bought. Excuse me, sir. If I believe in ethanol production through corn, and I want ethanol preferences, and I go out and vote that way, and someone who's an ethanol producer gives me money. Oh, he was bought off. Well, how about the fact that I campaigned on doing it, and the guy wants someone who supports him in office? That's not buying anybody. I can tell you, I don't know too many legislators, too many congressmen, too many senators who get bought. You know why? Because the maximum contribution you can make is $3,000 in a $12 million race. $3,000 buys you? You're an idiot, right? It doesn't happen. I'm just saying, it doesn't happen. So, I understand you think it does. You can match things, but of course people who support what you support are going to give you money. They better, or you're going to lose. And then you're going to get people who don't support what you want in there. A lot of it is just people looking for a reason, except a reason that's right in front. There's the greatest heresy of the church, the Christian church, after the founding. You know what it was? Gnosticism. Gnosticism. It was a Gnostic gospel, the gospel of Thomas. Gnosticism is that don't believe what you see. Don't believe that Jesus is what he would. You can't believe anything you see or touch. It's something hidden behind that secret knowledge that is really what you have to seek. And we have a modern day Gnosticism in this country. We don't look at the facts. I'll use an example. The Epstein files. Everybody said Biden's hiding the Epstein files. Democrats are hiding it. Trump comes in. Trump's hiding the Epstein files. There's files there. Dan Bongino, who made a career in radio going after the Epstein files, becomes into the FBI and says, look, there's no Epstein file. He's involved. There's a joke going around Washington. One of these Epstein file guys dies, goes to heaven. God comes before him and says, I've been wanting to ask you this question. Who's on the Epstein file? And God says, there's no Epstein file. I can't believe it went this high. You can't convince people of something that is unknowable is wrong. And we have in the conservative movement today, we have a growing Gnosticism. That somehow there's some evil force, an unknowable force behind the scenes that's corrupting everything, instead of accepting the cold reality that the American public is voting for this. They vote for these programs. They vote against people who cut these programs. Politicians are afraid to cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security because they lose their vote, because people don't want it. You have a hard time dealing with that reality, but that's true. I always say the President of the United States, Democrat and Republican, is a reflection of America. Congress is a reflection. You vote for them. And you see them and you don't like it. And so you blame some other thing, some secret reason, when the reason is as plain as day. Our country is not going to hell because our government's going to hell. I know that we like to admit it because we're part of it. People ask me all the time, you're 67 years old, you've been in politics for 35 years, you've been out here talking about this. Tomorrow will be my 72nd trip on United, traveling around the country, talking to groups. I've got 8 kids, 7, soon to be 13 grandchildren, the oldest of which is 4. Yes, my kids are fertile. And I'm running around the country. People say, why are you doing this? Here's why. Because I've been involved the last 3 to 5 years in prominent leadership roles in Washington, D.C. I ran for president. I've been in the halls of power. I've been working this thing. And you know what? America has failed during that time. We have gone downhill pretty much straight. And I was one of the guys at the tiller. You can say, well, Senator, you did everything you could. You fought those battles. You fought for life. You fought for marriage. I still fight for marriage, the real marriage. I fight for all the things. I fight for limited governments and balanced budgets and reforming Washington, D.C. Why? Because I don't believe in participation trophies. It's my fault. I look in the mirror and I look at myself and I say, you were there, you were in charge, and you failed. I own it. Here's the problem. Most Americans don't. They won't own it.
I'm going to give you 10 more minutes and then I'm going to cut you off.
You're being paid to travel the country.
Yes, I am, because I have to make a living.
I just want to make sure that's clear, yeah.
Well, let me assure you, that I get paid a lot more doing something else. Okay? And so, yes, I am paid, because I can't do this for free. I've got a disabled girl at home, I got a family, yes, I get paid. And I, no qualms about it. You'll be happy to look it up, you can see exactly how much I'm paid. The bottom line is, I'm not doing it for the money. I don't do this, travel, leave my family for the money I make. I do it because someone has to tell the truth in there. Someone who knows enough, someone who's been there, someone who knows all the players, and I know them all. I served with Chuck Schumer, I served with Nancy Pelosi. And even the guys who are new, I know most of them, because they've asked me to campaign for them or help them. I'm on TV all the time. I get paid to go on TV. Why do I get paid to do this? My bottom line is, Americans have to start dealing with reality. We've got a serious, serious problem. And if we don't address that problem in a structural, fundamental way, hoping that we continue to do the same thing we've been doing for the last 50 years, and somehow things are gonna change, is the definition of what? Mental illness. Doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. That's what we're doing. You can say it's not bad enough. I respect that. You don't think it's bad enough. And some people feel that way, fine. I do. And I think most Americans who are conservatives do. And I think it's worth whatever risk you assign to it. I don't care how relevant a risk candidly you think it is. I think it's worth it. Thank you. I'll take one more question. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just coming back a little bit to the, you were talking about the Second Amendment's never gonna change in America.
No, I said we could lose the Second Amendment, actually, in a fairly short period of time.
Well, and you're talking about originally one vote per state, but there is no limit and anywhere about how many delegates you can have. So
Every state gets to determine how many delegates they appoint. But no matter how many delegates you appoint, they're called commissioners actually, you get one vote.
Yeah.
So you can have, South Dakota can have 9 delegates, they vote, then they cast one vote.
I understand. So 36 Californians might announce speed or unpromised or whatever, South Dakota. And California.
I didn't understand what you said.
What I'm saying is that, yeah, there is final one vote, but there is no limit on how many delegates can every state bring in. So South Dakota might have 2 delegates, California might have 36 delegates. And now, of course, you have power of map or arguments or whatever. I mean, these guys cannot agree with each other in the leader. And they are in the same party. And now you can have people from the different states go there and stuff. California just became the first state in America to vote on Constitutional Convention on the right of safety. You read this, it's gutting the Second Amendment, completely gutting it up. Now, if there is any chance that we as a people in America are gonna lose the weapons, we have enemies around the world, powerful enemies, Russians, Chinese, Iranians, and many, many others, North Korea. They're gonna throw the billions of dollars on those delegates who are gonna be sitting there making the decision. They're gonna make them reach beyond the dream, just to get rid of our Second Amendment, because those enemies, Russian, Chinese,
And I would
they
just say
hate
this.
for us to have our weapons.
I would just say this,
They have bigger
Russians
interest
and
in
the
taking
Chinese
our
are
weapons
already
than
spending lots of
our
money to
government.
influence the American voter, to influence American politicians, just like we spend money in their countries to try to influence their own countries.
Yeah.
And
What I'm
you can
saying
say
is that we're gonna have people from California, which are totally liberal and communist, voting on the same thing.
Again, I'm not sure you're listening to what I said, which is that states have and will pass resolutions and bills to have delegates swear that they will not exceed the limits of what the convention is called for.
Well,
And
that's
they-
today, the Constitution is not keeping that's the promise. And they conceded it all the time.
Yeah. I would disagree with you that they are exceeding the Constitution. I mean, it does happen. I just mentioned several times that President Trump has done so.
Right.
Right? And so Congress does so, but that's why you have a court to slap it down and to say that it is or it isn't. But that's not the same thing. This is I went through how delegates cannot exceed their authority. I also went through that even if they do, there are ramifications to what they do, and there's still the 38 state threshold, which is damn near impossible to get anyway. It's certainly gonna be impossible to get something controversial about. So I get fear, I get it. People are afraid of change, people are afraid of doing something different, people are afraid of doing the unknown, I get it. And so that's why it's hard, in many respects, maybe that's why this hasn't been done before. But I think we're at a different time in America. We've never been a time where we're at $37 trillion in debt, and that our debt payments is more than we spend on national security. This is unprecedented. It's not gonna get better. It's not gonna get better. there's no incentive for members of Congress to cut the budget.
Right.
You know why? Because none of you, the American public, I served in Congress for 16 years. How many times someone made an appointment with me to get my office and said, spend less on something? Never. Never happened. Now, I'll go to town hall meetings and people say, spend less. And you know what they'll say to spend less on? Almost every time. I say, okay, what do you want to spend less on? Foreign aid. In other words, something that I don't get benefit from. But they don't want to cut anything they get. Cut Social Security, MA for that? No. Medicaid? No. Medicare? No. Food stamps? No. Okay, that's 60% of the budget right there, and I haven't gotten the other programs you won't cut. Education funding? No. Okay, yeah, a few of you, but let me assure you, overwhelmingly, no. So I'm just saying, sir, with all due respect, this isn't going to change.
But we're talking about these two subjects, spending and the determinants. They are gonna have different ideas and they have different needs,
Yeah.
which they want to meet.
Sure.
These two subjects might not even be on the final table. They
No,
might be
I'll
thought-
give them
And
what
even
you
if
say.
they are, these people are gonna be talking about very different stuff.
34 states will be controlled by Republicans out of the 50 states that are there. They can talk about whatever they want. If you have 2/3 of the votes, or roughly 2/3 of the votes, you're not gonna get much done. Or the other side's not gonna get much done. How much did the Democrats get accomplished in this legislature? Not a whole lot. How many bills did they pass? You're talking about a very similar situation, and you're worried about the other side. Worry about the country. Worry about what's gonna happen to the country if we don't do this.
That's what I believe in.
Good. All right, thank you all very much. God bless.
Thank you all for coming to that. Stick around. Good to see you here.
No, my pleasure. I like the debate. It's great. Well, thank you. Keep watching. I appreciate it. Good to see you.
Recording?
Smile.
Yeah.